Jason, I'm a white boy and I'm jacked. Deal with it. The words from Brock Lesnar that it may come back to haunt him. Those were the words.
Are those really Brock's
prior.
words or are those Francis Maxwell's words?
A little bit of both. Those were the words prior to the UFC 200, and there was circulation of allegation on his steroid use before the fight. And as it turns out, he's been flagged. And it turns out that those words may come back to haunt him. So let's throw to this quote, get a little bit more context for you guys so you can understand what's going on. So news broke on Friday that Lesnar had been flagged by USADA for a banned substance stemming from an out-of-competition drug test collected on June 28th. Lesnar was tested 8 times in the 35-day period between his announced UFC return and his UFC 200 bout with Mark Hunt. Mark Hunt not very happy at the moment, but which he won by unanimous decision on July 9th at T-Mobile Arena in Vegas. It goes on. His return could be a one-and-done situation, despite receiving the largest disclosed fight purse in MMA history, $2.5 million. Not a bad bit of pocket change. Lesnar's potential USADA violation could lead to as long as a 2-year suspension from fighting. The UFC also has the right to rescind his pay. That is an interesting point, but you know what he won't be banned from? WWE. Either way. Thoughts?
No, of course not. And he's scheduled to fight at SummerSlam.
Yes, he
it's not
is.
WrestleMania 33. It's SummerSlam in August, or Wrestle, whatever it's called. But I mean, that's a big return, obviously, for him back to there because this was like a one-fight deal. Now, what I find even more interesting, and we're going to get to number 9, which is the Dana White tweet. So Dana White, again, we are 80% on Dana White's side for most decisions he's made. This is one of those 20%ers, right? So July 10th. What BS? At Brock Lesnar gets a pass on steroid testing to re-enter UFC, yet you boot John Jones, for doping. Dana White, scam artist. UFC is WWE. Dana White responded on July 10th, are you a moron? Brock Lesnar was drug tested like crazy by USADA. He was clean. Not true. So, of course, first of all, Dana White shouldn't be calling anybody a moron on Twitter. When you're a figurehead like that, you shouldn't be using Twitter for those reasons. You are at a different level of Twitter superiority that you need to understand when it is okay to call somebody out. And when you don't have all your facts, that's one of them. Now, people, they make those mistakes. Yeah. Right? But the difference is when you're that status of an organization and your company just sold not even a week later for a reported $4.5 billion, and you have a 9% stake in the UFC before the sale and continuing after. You're an owner, a part owner of that organization. You can't call people a moron. Yeah. Now, I'm not calling Dana White a moron. I think it was just a slip-up, a mistake, and look, he's done enough to make that company grow. He obviously knows more business than I do because he's now a freaking multi-millionaire, getting close to billion. So, in addition to that, it wasn't just Brock Lesnar because they found out what John Jones tested positive for. And I love this game. It's where I get to try and pronounce long forms of drugs that I butcher. So let's go to quote number 8. Via Tom Lay of Deadspin. According to NSAC, Jones' out-of-competition A and B urine samples tested positive for clomiphene.
That wasn't hard.
An anti-estrogenic substance, and letrozole, which, well, that's an all. All, like, pharmaceuticals are ols. Yeah. Of course, which works to prevent the synthesis of testosterone into estrogen. He doesn't want to be a girl. NSAC extended Jones' temporary suspension today, and he is facing a potential 2-year ban under the UFC's anti-doping policies. I don't see a reason why John Jones can't fight Brock Lesnar in the caught for doping UFC.
Division.
Yeah, it's like bantamweight, welterweight, light heavyweight, doping weight.
And if Nate Diaz, which it seems he's not far off from being right, it's going to be everyone. Everyone's going to be in that division soon. So there's a couple of points on this, right? So Dana White, yes, to get to that point, he's obviously in the heat at the moment. He just organized a card that when he first organized it, I talked about this with Shane, it was going to be it had Conor McGregor
moist.
It was going to be, he was moist from the top of his shiny head right down to his briefs. He was looking to this thing thinking, we could not have a better card stacked up. And then slowly but surely he had to deal with drama queens in the form of Conor McGregor that came to his press conference. And then he had to deal with drug allegations. And then he had to deal with drug violations. And then now he's dealt with 2 of his main fighters, one of which was beforehand dropping out and one of which fought illegally, which has happened in UFC before. So it's not like this is something that's new. So he's obviously pissed off, and he's obviously in the heat of the moment, and he's just responded to the first tweet that came to him that's asked, and I don't think
it was between the doping violation with Jones and UFC 200. So it was about 8 days ago.
Yeah,
that tweet. It wasn't today. I know.
I'm saying that's why I imagine if it was today, he's probably had time to process, blah, blah, blah. But in that point, he's just trying to defend his card. He's just trying to defend the business. And he's wrong, because there's a fundamental problem within the UFC, especially when they're bringing back athletes from other divisions, or athletes that haven't fought and are not up to date with the rules and how they're changing. They clearly are finding out that a lot of these athletes are using substances that, according to the rules, are prohibited. So they have to find out if someone like Brock Lesnar is coming back in from WWE, a sport in which many of the athletes, whether it's been disclosed or not, are using steroids. There has to, one, I know that he was rushing to get him into the card because he wanted to save it, because there wasn't enough big name fighters. But that was always going to be a risk. Even if Brock Lesnar was clean for a certain period of time, you never know, they might have tested him and certain things might have still been found in his system. And he was always going to run that risk. And I think if a businessman of his stature could have potentially bit the bullet and try to get Diaz and McGregor to fight in that card to still have it that superstar value.
There was probably a lot he could have done, but he trusted that he thought that this was the best course of action. And either way, look, you can stack the card. Here's what I've learned a lot about the UFC in the last 2-3 days, or at least the last week since UFC 200. You can stack the card as much as you want. Doesn't promise to make great fights.
Yeah.
And that's why we've seen fights like UFC 196 is one of the best cards I've seen. UFC 198 was great. And those were better than UFC 200. And guess what? I think UFC 201 might be better. I think UFC 202 might be better. It's just the idea that those certain milestones come, and you want to put multiple champions at one point on the card, the most familiar faces, the biggest names, but sometimes it doesn't turn out to be the biggest and best fights. That's okay. I wanted to move on to one quick thing before we finish, and that was pulled up from also Deadspin this morning. One of the writers, which I want to get his name down correctly, Elias Cepeda, penned a column criticizing the USADA and the UFC because the positive test wasn't revealed until 6 days after the fight. This is in regards to Brock Lesnar. So apparently went too far from Fox Sports, and the column can no longer be found on the website. It was called, and it was said it would offend the UFC. I just want to see where the name of it. UFC's dangerous drug testing inconsistency and hypocrisy demands answers was the title. And he went on to say that Fox Sports had been taken down on Fox Sports. He was told there's concern that it would offend the UFC, and this is the second time it's happened in the past couple months, which merits the story. It's worth noting Fox Sports and UFC are broadcast partners, with Fox Sports reportedly paying $100 million a year to broadcast UFC events. I really cannot stand when corporate bullshit money interferes with what could have been an important article. For whatever reason, this man's words, and according to the title and from what was written, doesn't seem that harsh. Actually seems like he's pretty much reporting on facts. Dangerous drug testing inconsistency and hypocrisy demands answers. It does. This is proof.
Yeah.
This is proof. You have your president on Twitter saying people are morons for him because he got tested 8 times, but one of those tests turned out to be fail.
Yeah.
And John Jones in your stars. I just wanted to bring this up for the point that this writer, Elias Cepeda, deserves to get his word out there. That's the whole idea of the freedom of the press, speech, all that shit, and freedom of speech. I could say shit on camera. And just that idea that Fox Sports pulls that column because it makes them possibly look bad. Because of their $100 million money coming in.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just got to let the writers write. All publicity is good publicity. It makes you more money, more controversy.
It's the same thing with journalists out there to do their job. The same thing with Ariel Helwani from MMA fighting.
For sure.
When they tried to push that corporate power towards him, banning him from the sport that he loves because he reported on the news. He broke news. He's a journalist. So they're trying to, once again, protect their name because they're not happy with the way their name's been dragged at the moment. The UFC is not happy with what's been going on. And one final point.
You know how you protect your name and your image? You lead by example.
And you know how you protect your name and your image is you reward those fighters who are, from what we know, playing by the rules. Like your Daniel Cormier.
Demetrius Johnson.
And like your Mark Hunt, who, by the way, has every right to be
Wants
pissed
half.
off. All right, let
Comment
us know
below.
what you think. Comment section below. What do you think of Dana White's response in the tweet? What do you think of Brock Lesnar? What is next for him? He is fighting Randy Orton, I believe, in August at WrestleMania.
SummerSlam.
SummerSlam. All righty.
Bring back the ladder match.
Cue the WWE fans rip me apart for one minor slip of the tongue. But I can take it.